One of the things that I find fascinating about this word confidence, everybody talks about it. Again, it's that elusive thing. How do you get it? Where is it? How do you obtain confidence? One of the things for me that I learned, uh, self-awareness always had to come first. And that was always foundational. Because if you have self-awareness, then you can self-regulate your emotions, right? To go into an opportunity that might be scary, you might not have confidence in. Because confidence to me wasn't something you got before doing the thing you were scared to do. It was always the thing that came after. Going into meetings with top executives, speaking on stages with 300 people, whether it's a play and a performance on a play or speaking on stage as an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter. I always get nervous beforehand. It's never like you need the tools before in order to then do the act of whatever that goal is. And it's only after that then you're like, oh my gosh, like that really wasn't that bad. And you kind of feel a little bit more confident. You never get it before. It might get easier and faster the more that you do things, but confidence isn't something you get. I think it's an asset that you get only after doing the thing.
Hello, I'm John Brink and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people that are watching us from around the world, they say, oh, we know where Canada is, and then British Columbia on the west coast, right? Right. And then we have this big city there called Vancouver. Well, we are 500 miles north of Vancouver, or for our European friends, 800 kilometers. And Prince George is a city of about 80,000 persons in the city, about 120,000 in the region. It is located in paradise and in nature. Lots of forests, lots of lakes all around us, and lots of other friends in nature, black bears, grizzly bears, mooses, deer, caribou, wolves, foxes, you name it, we have them all here, and we just love it. Today we have a very, very interesting podcast with a lady called Serah D'Laine. And Serah has a background in Hollywood, which is very, very interesting. And on the red carpet has spent time to reinvent Serah's reinvented her entrepreneurial life, once revolved around her Hollywood career. And she was a successful actress, obviously, known for gracing the screen with roles in feature films, network television, and national commercials. Now, that to me sounds like paradise. You can't have it any better than that. Somebody would look at from the outside. You're blessed not only with, and I'm not trying to be smart, but obviously you're very beautiful. And at the same time in Hollywood and doing all the things, that's as good as it gets. But other people sometimes believe it is not always so. And for a number of reasons, and Serah is going to show that or share that with us today. Serah, welcome to the show.
I'm very excited and honored to be here, John. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And tell us about you. Where are you originally from? Are you still in the Southern California area? Are you still in the Hollywood region?
I'm not.
Okay.
So yeah, if you want to start where I'm from, that's its own journey. I'll say it quickly. I was actually, born in California, Santa Barbara to be exact. And my parents are car designers. So at the time, You know, we didn't come from money, and my dad needed to do whatever he could to make money for his family. So that actually took him on contract work in Europe. So we left the States when I was 6, grew up traveling Germany, England, Sweden, France, Spain, Portugal, all of those places. I'm 3 languages in by the time I'm 11.
Wow.
New friends, new culture. And then moving back to the US, I think I was 12, 11 or 12, something like that,
Wow.
to Detroit, Motor City. And then I left my parents' house there and moved in with my grandmother at 13. That's when I got into the entertainment industry. And that had its blessings and challenges at the same time. But yeah, I like to say home is wherever I lay my head at night. It's given me, I appreciate it now. At the time growing up, I think it was just disheartening, right? Having to leave friends, make new friends. I was always the new girl. I was never the cool girl because I was always the new girl.
Right.
But yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate it much more now. And now I can move wherever I want and go wherever I want. And it feels comfortable to me. So yes, now I actually 4 years ago moved to Dallas, Texas from Los Angeles. And so far I like it. I like it here.
So, where did Hollywood come into the picture, and the dream of a lot of young persons, boys as well as girls, would be the dream world would become part of the Hollywood amazing scene, and then become an actor or an actress in movies would be the ultimate. How did this all happen?
Um, Fun story. I think I was really blessed really early on, starting honestly, it wasn't really ever like, oh, I want to be famous. Like I never really had that part in me at all. My parents saw a lot of creativity in me. I think when I was 5 or 6, I was actually doing similar to this. I was like making interviews, like mock interviews as a podcast. I'm like 5, but I'm recording both characters. Like I would record myself interviewing, and then I'd switch into whoever the guest is, and I would talk for them, doing accents. Like, yeah. So it was. I think they saw the creativity in me and just giving me things to do as a child. Those things, modeling classes, competitions, things like that, that I was really just doing for fun. And then it always like I would win the competition, and then I got to go and meet agents and things like that. And so my grandmother was actually a pinup girl in the war, and so she had ties into the agent or into Hollywood and having an agent. So whenever I would visit her during the summer, she's like, "Well, you know, let's see if Serah wants to try this stuff." And literally just for fun, because I enjoyed storytelling and I enjoyed art and the art of play and creativity. And so that's when it really started. And I was fortunate that things transpired into actual work that many people wait years for. So I'm so grateful. And it just became fun. It was honestly like one thing that I love about, there's plenty of negative things about Hollywood, but one of the things that I love is it teaches you that possibility is anything you want. You can be anything that you want in the world. Now, granted, it's the world of fantasy and you're creating these things, but isn't that also what the entrepreneurial spirit is? Isn't that what we have to have in anytime somebody has a dream for something bigger, you've got to be in possibility and creativity.
And you
So
have to be a,
say again?
believer, right? That a can-do attitude. Right? Now, the other thing I
Can
noticed about you, what comes to mind, other than the obvious, is that you're a very good communicator, and the other part what comes to mind is you have confidence. At least you portray
most
self-confidence,
of the time,
and
not every
you
day.
no, but and you're a good communicator, which are elements that brings you, other than for obviously you're pretty and attractive looking, but those are the secondaries to becoming also. You must have confidence and you must be a good communicator to get to the
Yeah.
stage that you did, and that brings you into being considered. I would think, I've never been in it, obviously, but that will bring you to the interest of people that make decisions in Hollywood in regards to movies and films, and becoming a candidate, a recognized candidate that is being considered as they plan for what should it be looking like, and which stars should be in it, or stars or whatever, right?
100%. One thing that translates very easily into being an entrepreneur as well as in Hollywood is there's something called the X factor. Some people call it your it factor. Nobody really knows exactly what it is. They think it's style. They think it's right. Everyone's defining it the way that they want to. But one of the things about being in, Hollywood is the largest media and advertising industry in the world. Yes, people flock to it. Everybody has dreams of creating something. And you're correct. What you said was really, really smart, that it doesn't matter. Like, looks are one thing that doesn't get you very far. You're a dime a dozen. If anything, that's the least valuable, to be quite honest. Like, it's not a factor. And so when you're walking into a room, I remember going into rooms and talk about like needing to not psych yourself out. You walk into a room and there's a line of women and they all look just like you. And sometimes I'll walk in and I'm like, and I appreciate beautiful women. Like, I
Sure.
can look at a woman, but like, she's absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
I think that there's more to a woman that makes her stunning than just physical beauty. And now we can buy it, right? Anybody can go and make themselves beautiful with
Correct.
all kinds of med spas.
Correct.
So it's even less valuable, right? Anybody can have it technically now with the right money and cost, right?
Yes.
And so walking into a room where that's the least valuable thing, you have to know what your value is, and you have to know what else can you bring to the table. Can you be a good communicator? Can you bring an energy and a vibe that will make you different or set you apart from literally thousands that look just like you, that are all wanting the same thing that you want? And that works just as easily, or it really translates into being an entrepreneur, because everybody's doing similar things as you. And do you have this bigger goal? And sure, you can use certain assets you've been born with. I'm grateful, I'm blessed, and we all need a little help sometimes. And what else are you bringing to the table? What are your values? What's your energy? What's your vibe? How do you communicate with people? Like, what else is it about you? Physical appearance? It's cheap these days.
So what I like about it, Serah, is that the X factor has elements. This one, that one, that one, that one, that one, and plus looks. But it is the package that hard to explain, but somehow that individual, lady, man, whatever it is, a person, then they have that X factor. And so, but certainly some elements are important to it. They must carry a certain amount, not ego, but self-confidence, and not feeling better than is an element, but somehow have factors that in combination make them attractive to Hollywood, but also to other settings, as you already indicated, entrepreneurship, where you interact with individuals all the time, especially if you're trying to grow an entity, whatever that may be, if that's business or whatever it is, you must have self-confidence. You must be able to present yourself, and you must have certain elements of the X factor to become successful.
One of the things that I find fascinating about this word confidence, Everybody talks about it. Again, it's that elusive thing. How do you get it? Where is it? How do you obtain confidence? One of the things for me that I learned, self-awareness always had to come first. And that was always foundational. Because if you have self-awareness, then you can self-regulate your emotions, right? To go into an opportunity that might be scary, you might not have confidence in. Because confidence to me wasn't something you got before doing the thing you were scared to do. It was always the thing that came after. Going into meetings with top executives, speaking on stages with 300 people, whether it's a play and a performance on a play or speaking on stage as an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter. I always get nervous beforehand. It's never like you need the tools before in order to then do the act of whatever that goal is. And it's only after that then you're like, oh my gosh, like that really wasn't that bad. And you kind of feel a little bit more confident. You never get it before. It might get easier and faster the more that you do things, but confidence isn't something you get. I think it's an asset that you get only after doing the thing.
I agree with you 100%. Like for myself, I'm 84 years young. I was born in 1940. Well, thank you.
You don't look a day over 50, sir.
Thank you. So I was born in northeastern Holland in 1940, and just before the war started, really, or actually, my mom and dad were married. They were in love, and they were married in 1938. And my dad got a job in a lumber company, and they rented a house, and they were in love. And so fairly quickly, they had a boy and a girl, and then. And then my mom was pregnant with me. I was born November the 1st, 1940. And then what happened is that we're so familiar with a fellow by the name of Adolf Hitler decided that Poland, at least a portion of Poland, should be part of Germany, invaded Poland, and then after that decided likely to do the same to Western Europe. So at that point, my dad was called into the Dutch army in April of 1940, so to get ready for a possible invasion. And the last they heard from him, he was seen in Rotterdam just before the bombing of Rotterdam, where the Germans decided to bomb the center of Rotterdam, and thousands of people died. And the reason that he did is that Holland didn't capitulate quick enough for him, and he wanted to show them how serious he was, so that's what he did. So from there on in, for 5 years, my mom would not know, and our family would not know if he survived or not. And then I was born November the 1st, 1940. I still remember as a kid hundreds of bombers overhead when the Allied forces had decided to start bombing the German war infrastructure. Mid-1943, forward day and night bombing. And a lot of the bombing routes went over water to avoid flak from the bottom, and we were living about 10-15 minutes from the Dutch border. And so my mom would take us outside on a flat roof behind our house, but the sound of hundreds of bombers, I can still hear it today. I will never hear it again. And she would take us outside, and in the distance, we could see the German cities burning, the sky be red. Places like Bremen, Wilhelmshaven, Hamburg, Kiel, all those cities, all relatively close to us, where Eastern Germany or Western Germany touches the North Sea in that particular region. And so I remember that. And the next thing I remember is that, the 1944, they had cut off all the food to Holland. And so I remember hunger still feel that as well. And so, and what we used to do is the kids, my brother, my sister, and myself, we would go with gunny sacks every morning into the railroad yards, pick up anything edible and burnable. And so the reason that we did as kids, because the Germans wouldn't shoot us, they boot us one, but we were back the next day. And then the following thing that I remember then is the winter of 1944, 44, 45 was the coldest on record. And we had a little room in our house. We couldn't heat the house, but just a little room where the kids and my mom, we would sit around the heater just to stay warm. And then
I know those little German heaters. I've
yes,
been in one
you
of
know
those.
the
We lived
ones.
in Germany. They're tiny little things. We had to keep the milk outside the window just to say, like, that was the refrigerator. I know those things.
Exactly.
What a
And
powerful story, though. Wow.
yeah, so the next thing that happened, April the 12th, 1945, we were liberated by the Canadian Army. And it made such an impression on me as a 5-year-old that I knew from that point forward I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada, when I grew up. I was trying to go when I was 17. My parents wouldn't let me. And then I was 18. I was drafted into the Dutch Air Force for 2 years, was mandatory. And then I went to Canada when I was 24. And,
Wow.
with nothing, a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and the dream of going to Canada, So,
What a really intense and powerful story that is, and your experience. I'm curious, going from hearing all of that when you were younger, like all the bombs and all that stuff, and then going out on your own. What do you think was the greatest thing that maybe you learned, or what did you discover about yourself in that moment? Or
yeah, so I was young,
like,
but I still remember seeing people, especially when the Canadian Army and the US or the Americans in other countries landed on Normandy to push out the Germans out of Europe, obviously, and then the Canadians went north to France, Belgium, around the west coast of Holland, pushed the Germans back through northern Holland where we were. So things got pretty rough then by that time. So I still remember seeing people being shot, people from our neighborhood being dragged out of their houses, and things that stayed with me, and saw far too much that we should not have seen. And obviously the positive side of us were liberated by the Canadian Army. But I still, as a result of those things, still have PTSD from that period. And then the other fear of losing the one parent, the inner child stayed with me. Got actually counseling for that in my 50th still, so very emotional.
we all need a little inner child counseling. We've all got some of that we've got to go through. I hear you.
So the combination of all of it was that, and academically, I was not a success story. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. And they said, "What are we going to do with this guy?" Some people said, "Well, send him to the mentally challenged school." They said, "No, we're not going to do that. So let's teach him a trade." So
But you must learn differently, though.
yes.
You strike me as a very smart man. I don't think that you fit. I'm not a test taker. Okay, I failed the GED before I then had to take a different test to test out of school at 15. So I know I'm not a test taker either, but you think differently. That's why you can't take a test. Am I wrong?
You're absolutely right.
Okay.
But it took me a long time. Kids are not easy on each other, as you know. So when
Sure.
I failed grade 7 3 times, all of a sudden the friends that I had that went to college and university, they kind of look down on me and say, "I'm a laborer." I'm proud of that today. But I became very good at what I was doing. At 12 and a half years old, I wanted to get a job in a furniture factory and as a laborer, and then wanted to become a furniture maker. But I had internal me knew I was just as smart as all the others, but I had to start over new again, because as the reason that I failed school, I never quite was clear to me. So I had the dream. My grandfather was a master carpenter. My dad worked in lumber. I wanted to build a lumber mill in Canada. So that was my second dream. And to do that, you have to go to the West Coast because that's where all the timber is and all the trees. So, but I couldn't speak the language, didn't know soul, and took the plane to Montreal, took the train across Canada, 3 days, 4 nights. My God, that is a long way. And then when I came to Vancouver, fortunately, I could speak a little bit of German. When I couldn't speak English, and there was a German fellow in the immigration department. I told him what I wanted to do. I wanted to build a lumber. He said, "Go to Prince George." That's what I did. 60 years later, I'm in Prince George. I can still see the the Greyhound station here. And yes, I did build my mill. The point that I was going to make is this one, is that the challenge that I had, although I was successful in business, and a lot of people said to me, "Oh, you're doing so well, and you build these businesses, blah, blah, blah." I didn't feel that way. Is that until I was here already for 32 years in Prince George, successful in business, was not a very good communicator, and I walked into a store here in Prince George, and I still don't know why. I picked up a book, and I have the actual book with me that I picked up, Driven to Distraction.
I don't know that one.
Written by Dr. Hollywell, and I don't know why I picked it up, and it was about ADHD, and I said, "Oh my God, that's me." And so I wrote in the book, this is the actual book.
I can relate to that.
Oh,
I can relate to
that. And I wrote in the book in Dutch because I was ashamed of it because it implied that you had mental challenges. So I'm building a business. What I'm going to do? Go to the bank and want to lend or get them to finance millions of dollars of projects, and saying, "Oh, by the way, this is my project, this is my proposal, this is my business plan, and by the way, I have a mental disorder," and say, "Oh, have a nice day." So. Yeah. Anyway, so I wrote in it in Dutch. Now I finally know who I am, and the date on it is January 1997.
Is that what you wrote?
By me?
Is that what you wrote? I finally know who I am. That's what you wrote in Dutch?
In Dutch.
I love that.
And the date is January 1997. So I had been here already for 32 years. And so ADHD, and then I started checking it out in the book, and then started Googling and finding out more about it. The more I found out about it, the more I started to become convinced that it is a superpower. And so it took me 5 years before I went to my doctor, that was a personal friend, delivered our 2 daughters, actually. And so he said, "Hey, John, why are you here?" I said, "I think I got ADHD." And so we checked it out, and yes, I do. So the point that I'm making, up to that point, I did not have the confidence. And then, although I was very successful in business, the question as to who am I didn't know. I always wondered, who am I? And why am I different than other people are? And obviously, traditional learning was not something that worked for me. Although I was very successful in numbers, I was obviously very successful in other things, but I never knew until then that ADHD was part of who I am.
But ADHD, I love that. I absolutely, and I love that you're so open about talking about it. And because you're right, like so many people, oh, it's a disorder or it's a mental challenge. Like, can we really please stop labeling things that's just another excuse to bully people into taking yet another medication for stuff, like, or to feel less than? I 100% relate to that. I told you I wasn't the test taker, right? No. And going through Europe, very similarly, Europe is more advanced in education than the US is. They just are. So by the time I get there, I don't have the level of education of the grade I have to go into. And so then they're like, why doesn't she know this stuff? She's stupid. Why doesn't she know? And
Yeah.
so then they held me back. They
Yeah.
put me into the class before. Then all of the friends that I'm trying to make there make fun of me because they're like, oh, now you're in the younger class.
Yeah.
It then happened again when we moved to then from Germany to Sweden. And then on top of it, I'm like learning German at the same time and in cursive. So I'm like having to like decipher cursive like it's a like Egyptian, like different coded structure
Exactly.
of language, and then learn the language and then also learn the education. It happens again in reverse by the time I get to Sweden. They say, well, okay, well, our system now we've learned this. She doesn't know because it was just backwards. Like they put you in based on age in Sweden. So now I
Yes.
had to jump forward 2 times, like 2 grades, which meant again, I don't know the level of education because I wouldn't. Now it's 2 ages older than what I would have had normally. It was just so backwards. So then they had to put me into the special class. I was always in the special class. So just reiterating again, like, oh, you must not be intelligent, having these teachers tell my mother, how come she doesn't know this? How come she doesn't know this? So I just learned to learn things on my own. And when I started in Hollywood, I homeschooled myself for 2 years. I learned the answer book, I had the answer book, and I would reverse engineer math problems because I didn't have a teacher to teach me frontwards to the end.
No.
So I had to learn it backwards and then check my own work. To me, like I'm an absolute advocate for education, but I'm an advocate for chosen education. Maybe
Exactly.
it was because I've gone through the school system that wasn't serving me, right? Granted, at different age ranges, but also even coming back to the US, I don't feel like it's set up for a mind that is creative, for a mind that wants to see things outside of the box. It's set up so that it keeps you very structured. And I don't know one entrepreneur that is really that structured, and it just doesn't serve. If anything, you have to unlearn how school systems have taught you to stay within the confines. Meanwhile, you have these big dreams to achieve something more. You have to fight against a repetitive conversation that's been taught to you your entire life. So on one hand, I didn't have that. If anything, I had to learn, wait a second, you can learn things on your own. You can learn things from chosen education, not on your own, excuse me. Seek who you want to learn from. So that's where mentors, coaches, courses, seminars, things that I could feel passionate about, books. I love that you have a book that like really started speaking to you. I think there's always a moment somebody's like, you find that like transformational book that is on the peak of your journey of self discovery. I have one of my own. It wasn't ADHD, but yes.
So the interesting part, Serah, is that I feel I agree with you 100%. I knew that I was just as smart as the others, but in a different way. I didn't know what it was. And it took me
Yes.
coming all the way here, being successful and building lumber mills and doing other things. But I
Yeah.
was not a good communicator either. I did not have the confidence until somebody. I was okay in my mill in the setup of my businesses, 3 or 4 people together, but not more than that. And so then, by coincidence, and the point that I'm making is that I ran into coincidences. The Canadians that liberated us, the dream of going to Canada, starting with nothing, building a lumber mill, and just to prove to me that I was just as
Yeah.
smart as anybody else, not better than, but at least as smart. And
Yeah.
then finding this book, the other part of it, but it's interesting in terms of communications. I already knew before this that in about 1990, and by then I was 50 years old, somebody said to me, an ex-sister-in-law actually said to me, why don't you go with me to an organization called Toastmasters. I said, what are they doing there? She said, communication skills. I said, okay, are they going to ask me any questions? No, they said, no, just sit there and listen to it. You will like it. It helps you create confidence and all the other kind of things. So I was sitting there in the middle of the meeting. Somebody said to me, hey, John, tell us all about it. I said, okay, I'll never go back here. But I did. I stayed there for 10 years, and that to me was one of the best decisions that I made in terms of becoming an effective communicator or creating the confidence. In Toastmasters, very popular throughout North America in particular as we speak. Probably 1 million people are in Toastmaster clubs all around Canada, in the United States, and Europe. And probably tens of millions of people have been being part of it, and has different levels. And I'm a distinguished Toastmaster. The highest level that you can be is that.
Amazing.
Yeah, but what it did, it gave me the confidence. And Toastmasters is not about speaking. A lot of people think it may be. It is first and foremost about becoming a good listener. The second one is being able to speak on your feet about topics in a coordinated manner and with confidence. And then the third one is probably preparing presentations and all those things. And then first and foremost is creating confidence, for somebody that, give them the ability to become more effective communicators. So that changed my life. And then the next one in 1997, I found a book. Now, the other part about this book, I should tell you, is Dr. Hollowell, medical doctor. He's a professor. He's probably recognized globally as one of the most advanced individuals in regards to ADHD and slow learning. And he has dyslexia as well as ADHD. So do I. And, he wrote this book and 18 other books, but this one in particular in 1993. I bought it in 1997, and I interviewed him on my podcast number. You are my podcast number 386. I podcasted him on my podcast number 203. And can you believe
Amazing.
it? And
That's
so
incredible.
when we were discussing this, so I suggested that, from the time, initially I thought probably 8% of the population ADHD, or maybe more. So the more I got to know about it, I suggested to Dr. Hollowell, he's the expert, but I lived it in a way, and so did he, is that I believe that more than 20% likely are ADHD. He said, no, John, more than 25%. I agree with him. And then the other part in terms of, and you touched on this somewhat, is that I got to know a lot of people and that were successful entrepreneurs, successful business people, people in organizations and businesses as I became more involved. And a lot of those successful people, I believe, I suggested to Dr. Hollowell, that probably 50% of them are ADHD. He said, no, John, probably 75%. And I agree with him. I agree with him.
That sounds like that could be really accurate. I mean, it is accurate, apparently. That sounds about right.
So for me, it was a question of,
73%.
So for me, it was a question
I'm
of,
curious.
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you go
I
ahead.
was going to ask you, you're so passionate about this. Like, what have you learned of how it's now a strength, coming from seeing it before and not feeling like it was, or you're saying slow learning. Like, I'm curious now, because you've been successful and you've had multiple business ventures. How have you used it as an asset?
Very good question, Sarah. That's why I gave you the background when I read that book in 1997 and then got diagnosed, when I was 62 years old, 5 years later, by my doc. If I go back to the time that I became a laborer from school, I was very good at numbers, but I was not a good reader, but I was a good writer. all because of dyslexia and ADHD, but I didn't know that. So that if I look back, so going to become a laborer at 12 and a half years old, it took me till I was 62 to discover ADHD and being diagnosed. So for 50 years, I was wondering, who am I? And so what helped me before that Toastmasters, when I was 50, I did that for 10 years. That allowed me the ability to become more effective in communication. But the issues around ADHD gave me confidence that it is a superpower. And so since that time, when I was well into my 60s, 6 years ago, everybody said to me, "You should write a book," and about. Now, writing books is not easy, and so I stopped, and 6 years ago, I thought, if I don't do it now, it will never happen. So I did, and I started writing a book. It took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. This one
That's great. Do
against
I still have
all
time?
against
So I
all
should be
odds.
writing mine now then.
And then after writing that one, I did another one, ADHD Unlocked. I felt I had to, be
Oh,
more
that's great.
right about it. And then I did
Yeah.
another one that I'm going to show you, this one, and that is a picture of me, actually. I'm the oldest
Yeah,
competitive bodybuilder in North America, living young,
I saw
dying
those
old.
videos.
Yeah,
I saw those videos of you working out bodybuilding. I was very impressed.
I like it. So so that's my long story about. It took me a long time to find out, who am I, and so once
Mm.
I did, and then then from there, and then it unlocked the ability to start writing books about it, becoming a presenter as you are, and then starting to feel that I have an obligation to share with others that ADHD, which is so frequent now, that I believe that, as Dr. Oliwell said as well, that somewhere between 25 and 30% of the population globally ADHD in some form or fashion. And so I feel that it's important for me to present about it. I usually introduce it in most of my podcasts that I do, but just a small segment. And then I do presentations, and obviously I write about it. And coming to the question that you asked, what did it do for me? It took me a
Yeah.
long time. And now people say, how do you do all the stuff that you're doing, including I do a lot of podcasting and as well, and I love it, is saying that, and then 10 different companies and doing all this other stuff. How do you do it? I said, ADHD, that's how I do it.
Yeah, it's a multitasking superpower. How do we get it all done? How do we think of 20 things at one time and get them fulfilled?
That's what it
You
is.
also, you probably already know this as well. In my experience with it, it's like I can think of the 20 things at one time, and then I also have to give a little bit of extra support, which is, okay, well, what's going to implement? Like if I'm not going to implement all of them, because we're also might be mentally superhuman, we're not superhumans who can do a billion things. Needing implementation and support, but that's also when you just hire people to do
Exactly.
it for you. You can
Exactly.
have all the creative ideas. And I think building a business without vision, it doesn't go anywhere.
You can't do it
So
alone.
you
You have
have
to build a team around you, right?
you
So,
have to build
a-
the team.
and that's very, very important. So now with you,
Yeah.
so now what you do is you decided to go into a different direction after your career at Hollywood, and so you
Yes.
became more, felt that you had to go into the coaching direction. So that also means that you had to become, which you are obviously, a speaker and a presenter, which is a whole new
Yeah.
skill set. As you said earlier, is that I do the same. Last Monday, actually, I did a presentation to in Calgary, Alberta, to the ADHD Association of the Province of Alberta. And so there must have been between 350, 400 people. And that's not uncommon, but I do the same as you do. I have a sense of anxiety always, to a certain extent. It's because I must have that for me to do well. And so I'm not afraid of making presentations, but I will have a sense of anxiety to make sure everything is working well, everything is well, and then once I start presenting, it goes, relatively speaking, automatic for me. But, to have that feeling is something that I require for me to excel.
I think I don't remember who the psychologist was that mentioned it, but hopefully the listeners will recognize this as well, that there's a fine line between anxiety and adrenaline excitement. So
Exactly.
it's also a perspective where it can feel the same in the body. It's what we tell ourselves, and it's the part of us that, well, is it the fear part that's going to be limited by this feeling? Or is there the stronger part that can say, well, this is also really exciting and it's registering the same in the body? So, yes, I agree with you. Sometimes you need it. Like, that's what's going to get you off the couch. That's when people talk about, like, oh, I need the motivation. I'm like, no, you need the momentum. You have to, like, what is the energy behind it? Anxiety is adrenaline, it's excitement, it's energy, it's movement.
Exactly.
So, I think it's incredibly important.
Now, the other part about it
So,
is, and you likely feel the same as I do, is that we have the same with. I've never met you before. I just met you through your bio this morning before I did the presentation. So I came to a number of conclusions. I love
oh,
Hollywood.
goody. What are they? What
And I say,
conclusions did you come?
where is her picture? And it was not a disappointment, obviously. And so,
Thanks.
and then
That's
from
good
there on
lighting
in,
for you.
and but at the same time, and well, I'm being serious, obviously, but also a little bit tongue in cheek, a little bit,
Yes.
But at the same time, though, that I'm not sure what is going to happen in this hour, and so it gives
Yeah.
that sense of that. But I know, and that's likely where confidence comes from. I know whatever happens, and a lot of things have happened in nearly 400 presentations that I've done where I'm the guest or where I'm the host, another 250 where I've been a guest. That's things happen, but we can always manage that. And so, and I know that, and that then gives me the ability to, try to
Go with it.
feel, yeah, go with it,
Yeah. Go with it.
so, and good,
Sometimes it's easier.
yeah,
Maybe you're the same. Like sometimes if I think of something too soon, like I didn't ask you to tell me the questions. I don't always like to know the questions ahead of time. I'll get into like overthinking, and sometimes that is worse, where if I'm just present and just bringing myself into that state where, okay, everything's great. Let's just connect and have a cool, fun conversation and see what happens. Like
yeah.
that's more exciting to me
And
too. Too planned, your life can't do that.
no, and there we are friends. We just met. We sitting down and having dinner together, and we just let it flow. Now, the other part
Yeah.
about it, Sarah, which is so exciting about podcasting, is that we already know, as you do, I make presentations, and to be, for me, sitting here in northern British Columbia, and you in Dallas, Texas, that when I go do a presentation somewhere else, then it usually takes me 2 days, the day to get there, day to get back, get prepared, blah, blah, blah. And then maybe 400 or 500 people or whatever it may be. That's all exciting. I like to do some of those, but most of my interaction I get and where I get the biggest responses is like on a podcast like this. We know already this will be watched globally, and not bragging about it, but I have close to 750,000 subscribers on YouTube, which likely means that the other platforms that we may well have 1.5 million to 2 million people watching us, in this conversation. And it's only at the beginning, the podcasting. It's still on its infancy.
Yeah. I what I love about that is, and hopefully it will inspire anybody who's listening to then think about and maybe have their own conversations around this. Like I said, self-awareness is always step one and most important for any goals that you want to achieve, business or otherwise. To me, and I love that you say making presentations, because I'm absolute nerd for making like visual presentations. Maybe that's the ADHD. Like, we need the visual plus the information. Absolute nerd for it. Some people are like, I hate it. I'm like, I'll live for it all day when I have the time. Now, not so much anymore. Like, I have to have somebody else do them. But to me, it's always fun. Yes, doing presentations, talking on stage, but the most fun for me was always the connections that happen after, if the questions that people want to ask more like one-on-one or in a small group. That's where like all the that's just where the gold is. And that fills my heart more than anything. It doesn't matter. It could be a room full of 1,000 people. Wonderful. I've done that. And like really being able to connect with somebody and give them even an ounce of something that would help lead them or take them on their journey and help them get further faster. That's where it's at for me. So I agree with you.
So I had an interesting, I just want to share that with you. And one of the amazing experience is that when I did that presentation in Calgary, about 400 people or so, I guess. And so before that presentation, I had brought with me several hundred books like this. I just gave them out for free, so because to me it's, I want to support people that are still struggling with it, at least give them my opinion. So before that
should be your book should be a prerequisite for any entrepreneur. Like, if you're an entrepreneur, you need to read this before entering into any business. Just
I like that. So before my presentation, somebody came up to me, a lady together with a little son, and the son must have been around 10, 11, 12 years, maybe not even that. And so she said, he wrote a book. And he said to me, I wrote a book. And he was just a little fella. And so that was before the presentation. So he said, I want to give you a copy of my book. And I said, oh, that is great. So I looked at that little book that he had written. And so, and that's, so I gave him a big hug and told him that we love him, obviously. And so after I did the presentation and did the Q&As, as you talk about, so the presentation was an hour and 10 minutes or so, or 15 minutes. And then Q&As, they went on, probably for 3/4 of an hour. But in the latter part, and so I said, okay, stop first. I have to share with my group. I told the group that I met this author, and I'm an author. I did 6 books, and he gave me a copy of his book, and I want you to meet him. And I said, P.O., where is P.O.? Way in the back, there was his mom. And so everybody started. I said, come here, because I was still standing by my lectern with my hair on. And so, and then he stood by there, and I was standing up the elevation. I said, no, come up top here. I want you to stand with me. And so that is the reward, And we took a picture on my Facebook, actually, with me standing with him and showing his book. And he won the boat, and everybody clapped. So those are the rewards.
And he was 5? He was 5?
I think he was less than 10 years old.
With the entrepreneurial spirit already selling.
Peel. Unbelievable.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So those are the things that are important.
Those are the things.
So tell us more about what are you doing. Okay, so the other thing I want to make sure, have you got a contact point that people say, well, we want to connect with Serah about what you now can do, and maybe share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, anything, I have two websites. We have the agency website, which is all for branding and marketing. Look, now I just switched into like, it sounds like a pitch.
Yeah,
No
no, that's fine.
pitch.
That's it. Yeah.
The agency is one thing, that's stage 8. But I still have my personal brand, obviously. And that's what I love, supporting people, building their businesses, using the power of their personal brand. It's what it's where I came from. It's the asset that I use to then switch into building my own business. And I believe it's the number one fastest, most effective way for any entrepreneur to build their dreams, and also at the same time become the version of themselves that they have that deeper desire. Or even if they don't, they'll realize you have to become the version of you in order to be successful. And so the personal brand website is serah.delaine.com. You can see how my name is spelled a little bit differently. So Serah with an E. That one, we are going to be launching a live quarterly training. And so you can sign up for the wait list for that for free. And then when it comes out, you'll be on the newsletter for that. Other than that, I've been more on LinkedIn. So send me a personal message. Like I always say, sometimes my team will take a couple things, but I always look at the messages, and I always like, as best as I can, getting back to people. So Instagram tends to be a little bit more overwhelming, but if you're on Instagram, send me a message. Either I or my team will see it and find it and get it to me, or on LinkedIn. Like if you just want to reach out and ask me some questions about your business, that's always the best and easiest way. Other than that, there's a lot of really fun freebies and goodies and things to download on my website. So if you ever want to know
And
more.
then and then you're active on podcasting as well, then, Serah?
We're going to be relaunching the podcast. Yes. So
Okay.
I so appreciate connecting with people through podcasts, because we can do it all over the world. I'm fortunate enough that, I work with people all over, and having a podcast obviously does that. When I first started, it was still doing lives, but it was through Instagram. So I
Wow.
love being able to reach the international market. That's always been my brand. So yes, we will be relaunching. It just hasn't been. There's just been a lot of things in the fire, right? To go
Well,
talk about
exactly.
ADHD.
Yeah.
So
So
yes, it's definitely on the dock for 2020 for this year.
yeah, so I find it an amazing, amazing platform, and and I've been very,
Yeah,
very active on it, obviously. And the next thing that I want to
obviously.
do, going to the next level, I keep writing. I'm doing another book that's coming out in June on communications, actually, and then I'm going to start a platform that we're going to start in the next 3-4 months, and
Wonderful.
on all those kind of things. So that's a whole
Yeah.
new
I
experience as
see.
well.
And I can't decide either. It's like, I have the book. Now I officially know. What did you say before? It was like it took you like 50 years to figure it out, 20 years to,
8 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. Have you got the
yeah,
book
I think
out already? Have you got them out?
no, that's why I'm like, I'm right there with you. Like that feels literally exactly where I'm in. I'm like, okay, well, then that means I should have it out by next year. So I do know now, because for a minute it was, what what do I really want to put out into the world, and what do I really want to say, and what is this, what's on my heart and my spirit that I'm passionate about. I can talk all day about building businesses and funnels and marketing and branding, and that's very fun. And I have plenty of things for that. And one of the things that I've learned through this process, and I take also from the tools from being an actress in Hollywood, is learning about the parts of you that you get to become, that you get to step into next, and that future version of you. And even in Hollywood, like you mentioned, like getting to know yourself and really, like, who am I? That really, really resonated with me. And I think a lot of people can really relate to that as well. And when I was playing all these different characters, at one point it was almost like, well, who am I? Like, am I lost in all of these? it took me on my own spiritual journey to discover that in each one of them, I was actually meeting different parts of me. And so whenever you're embodying an identity, you tap into something within yourself, discover what that is, and then act, for lack of a better term, act that out authentically right throughout your life. Or there's always been moments for me, and I even just did this last year. I had a bigger goal. I set a bigger vision for myself, and my current version of that identity that didn't match that future version. She's like, talk about confidence. Like, I'm not that version yet. And so one of the things that I'm so passionate about is doing parts work psychology, because you can create, rather discover from within you, these parts of you or this future version of you. It's not fake. This is not a fake it till you make it. You have to have it within you. If you feel it and you can imagine it, it's already coming from within you. If you get inspired from reading another book and that hits and resonates with you, it's pinging off of something within you. So everything is always authentically coming from within. And it's just, are you giving yourself then the opportunity to fully play that out, fully embody it, give that part of you the spotlight, for a fun pun, but understanding all the parts of you that might get in the way of your success, and then identifying and embodying and integrating the part of you, that future version that you have that desire to step into next. And that to me is the fun. That's the core, and that's really the foundation of anything. If you have that entrepreneurial spirit, I don't care if you're just starting or you've already made 6-7 figures and you're wanting to go bigger. There's always that version of you, and that's the adventure. And that's always the framework that we develop. That's the profitable personal brand. One of the pillars of that is persona. And that's 100% what it's all about. You have to go there first. You have to discover who you need to become before your marketing strategy, before your branding. Like, none of that matters if you're not stepping into it. So that's what I feel the book needs to be.
I love it, Serah. I look forward to it. I will send you copies of my book, all 4 of them.
Yes,
I will
please.
sign them for you. Yeah, and get them to you. And I think this one should become a movie, actually. Send them to one of your friends in Hollywood and saying, hey, contact this guy, because that would be a best-selling movie, actually, because it goes all the way from down and, So and for all the people watching us from around the world, that this interview with Serah and others that we do, and Serah will be starting to do fairly soon as well, is subscribe to us, contact us, share it with others, like it, and because if you do react to our podcast and indicate to us you like what we're doing, then encourage us or give us suggestions to do other things. But subscribe to us, because it encourages us to go further. Serah, it was unbelievably beautiful. If you were closer, I would give you a big hug, but I have to go to Dallas to go. At some point, we will meet together, and so 6 months from now, we'll touch base again. I'll get Scott to stay in touch with you and see what has happened to your book, and just to kind of, because we can at least go on for another 2 hours, and so we have to stay in touch.
Absolutely. And I'm so grateful to be on, and thank you. And to all of your listeners, hopefully they got a little inspiration to do. And thank you for creating this platform for all of them, so people can just continue to learn and be inspired. This is really, really wonderful work. And I'm so honored and appreciative to be on your show. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Serah. Take care.